Hello and welcome to the third Thursday at Hoover's. I'm so glad you could all join us this evening. I'm Brad Reiners, the Communication Director for the Hoover Presidential Foundation. Now we'll begin the program in a few minutes, but first I have a lot of news to share with you about upcoming events that you'll want to participate in. Last month, we launched a new website called timelessvaluescampaign.org. When you visit that site, you'll learn about a major fundraising campaign for the renovation of the Hoover Presidential Library and Museum exhibit space. It's been about 28 years since the last renovation, and we're excited about bringing new technology and other updates into the museum. You'll also learn about a special benefit for Iowa taxpayers who contribute to the Timeless Values campaign and how to earn a 25% Iowa state tax credit for your gift of any size, no matter how much the gift is, up to $1 million. So now let's take a look at some upcoming events. Next month on Third Thursday at Hoover's, we'll have the personal story of a man whose grandparents survived the Russian famines thanks to Herbert Hoover's relief efforts between 1921 and 1933. Should be a very interesting program, and registration for it is now open. The Hoover Presidential Museum is now open Tuesdays through Saturdays from 9 to 5. Timed tickets are available online at hoover.archives.gov, and there's a special new temporary exhibit waiting for you called Leonardo da Vinci Machines in Motion. The exhibit contains about 30 machines that were built after in-depth study of da Vinci's designs by a group of scientists and skilled craftsmen. They're life-size and most are fully operational. The fun part is they're hands-on. You can set them in motion yourselves while learning about these items. This exhibit is perfect for engineers, tinkerers, mechanics, and families with children. Virtually everybody's going to enjoy this. So in addition to that, there are 4 other events lined up for you this weekend. On Saturday, the Hoover Presidential Foundation and the West Branch Lions Club teams up with the Hoover Hunger Project, where we hope to package 100,000 meals for distribution in the U.S. and overseas. Now we need lots of volunteers to help package these meals. This could be held in the Hoover Elementary School gym in West Branch. Volunteer shifts are from 10 to noon or noon to 2. You can learn more about how you can help with this effort by searching Facebook for the West Branch Lions Club or on our website, hooverpresidentialfoundation.org, under the News and Events tab. Then look under the Calendar of Events. Now, also on Saturday, we invite you to come and watch 14 amazing high school seniors from all across Iowa as they present the results of their Uncommon Student Award civic projects. This event runs from 9 till 5 with presentations about every 20 minutes. Each of the students will earn a $1,500 award for their work, and 4 will earn a $10,000 scholarship to the school of their choice. You'll be amazed at what these students have accomplished this summer. The event's located in the Radisson Conference Center in Coralville, and it's free to attend. After a day of packing meals and supporting the Uncommon students, you'll want to unwind with a great dinner and program at Brown Deer Golf Club in Coralville at 6 p.m. Richard Norton Smith, a nationally acclaimed presidential historian and biographer, will be the keynote speaker, and he always brings some fascinating stories. And we'll start with a cash bar reception at 6, followed by a meal and program at 6:30. The tickets for this event are $65 each. Members of the foundation and their guests get the member rate of $50 each. But it's all booked up. So we do have a waiting list in case we get any last minute cancellations, but you'll have to call our offices Friday morning to claim your spot and get on that waiting list. Then on Sunday, October 24th, we're inviting Richard back to participate in a Hoover Forum, along with the former director of the Hoover Presidential Library, Tim Walsh, and Dwight Miller, a retired archivist from the library. Tom Schwartz, the current director of the library, will be the moderator as the panel discusses Presidents Learning About Presidents. They'll bring stories of past presidents and first ladies who have visited the Hoover Presidential Library and all the things that they've learned during their visits. This is a free event, and it runs from 1 till 3 p.m. on Sunday. This takes place at the Hyatt Regency Ballroom in Coralville, and we just ask that you reserve your free seats online in advance so we can set up the event more efficiently. We can always add more seats, so don't miss this event. You'll find the registration information on our website, right along with all the other programs. As for tonight's program, We invite you to enter questions at any time during the program through the Q&A feature you'll find along the edge of your screen. You may also vote for questions someone else has entered if you'd like to hear those answered. Now, we might not have time to answer all the questions provided, so the top vote getters usually get asked first. Today's presentation is called Hoover's Last Trip Home. Our speaker is Lynn Smith, the audiovisual archivist at the Hoover Presidential Library and Museum, where she's worked since November 2000. Lynn's previous work experience includes serving as the Government Documents Department Supervisor at the University of Denver and archivist for the U.S. Forest Service in Montana. She is a certified archivist and holds a BA in history from the University of Northern Colorado, master's in history from the Archival Management from Colorado State University, and an MLIS from the University of Denver. She's chaired the Society of American Archivists Committee on Ethics and Professional Conduct, and has taught workshops on ethics and copyright law for the Midwest Archives Conference and the Society of Rocky Mountain Archivists. In her career, she's been elected president of the Society of Rocky Mountain Archivists, secretary of the Academy of Certified Archivists, and the nominating committee of the Midwest Archives Conference. So she has collected some great photos, videos, and audio files to share with us from Herbert Hoover's funeral services back in 1964. Hoover died on October 20th, 1964, and was buried here in West Branch on the 25th. So Lynn, thank you for joining us tonight. We're looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you for your kind introduction, Brad. It also want to make note that this marks the second year of the Third Thursdays, and I'm happy to be a part of launching what will be the next year. Also, just kind of a note, this coming October 27th is World Day for Audiovisual Heritage. It's a key initiative of UNESCO and the Coordinating Council of Audiovisual Archives Associations to honor archival institutions for safeguarding our AV heritage for future generations. So in that kind of spirit, was able to put together a very visual production of what happened on those few days after October 20th when Mr. Hoover died. It's a combination of Army photos and photos, black and white and color photos from press, local residents, all kinds of media donations have come in over the years. This silent film, color film of the Army, because Hoover's funeral was an Army military production as former president, and also worked in a couple of pieces of artwork. So it's kind of a full thing. The recording you'll hear about a third of the way in is the radio broadcast of WMT Radio out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And it features Grant Price, a well-known radio man that eventually went into television, and some of the other WMT on-air news people that followed the cortege from Cedar Rapids Airport along I-80 to West Branch. And there's a full recording of the funeral service that's unedited. The assorted clips that you hear of the radio people are just those segments of a longer, like 2.5 hour recording, but no one has 2.5 hours to do this, so we can crunch it. But I did not cut any part of the funeral. Even silences of things are as is. So our story begins with Mr. Hoover's death at the age of 90, shortly before noon on Tuesday, October 20th, 1964. Plans for his funeral were made way back as far back as 1958. So when he passed, the pre-established sequence of events began. So let me hit share screen, and we should have media. Enlarge it to full screen. And if I can find the play button, there it is. So on October 21st, the casket was moved to St. Bartholomew's Church and placed on the replica of the Lincoln catafalque, which was sent from Washington, D.C. At 9 a.m., it was open to the public. October 22nd, the church was closed from 3 to about 5 p.m. as a funeral service was held with President Lyndon Johnson and John Connally, the Texas mayor, New York City Mayor Robert Wagner. Here you see Robert Kennedy, his mother Rose, and wife Ethel, and of course the Hoover family and other dignitaries attended this funeral. In the family group were Mr. Hoover's two sons, Herbert Jr. and Alan, and their wives Margaret, and their 6 grandchildren. The Reverend Terrence J. Finley, the rector of St. Bartholomew's and a personal friend of the Hoover family, conducted the funeral service. St. Bartholomew's reopened to the public at 5 p.m. through 9 p.m. And there you see the rector. So the people lined up around the block at the church, which was located at 51st and Park Avenue in New York City, waiting to view Mr. Hoover's flag-covered casket. Between the 21st and 22nd, some 22,000 people paid their respects at St. Bartholomew's Church. And the church was open from 9 to 3 on the 22nd, and then 3 to 5, and then 9. The next morning, October 22nd, the family and friends arrived at the church. The U.S. Military Academy Band, along with a company of cadets from the West Point, were on hand, and hundreds of people watched from across the street. A joint service honor cordon lined the church steps. At the top of the steps leading from the church on Park Avenue, the body bearers waited while the band played ruffles and flourishes, then Hail to the Chief. When the band began the hymn, Lord, Thou Hast Been Our Dwelling Place, the body bearers carried the casket down the steps, through the honor cordon, and placed it in a waiting hearse. The body bearers and flag team marched away, and you'll see after the driver's door of the hearse closed, the honor cordon and all military present ended their salute. You can see the men there as they moved the casket very slowly. There's the Hoover family. This is Army film of different angles. It's a series of clips. It's never footage, 30 seconds of here, a minute of that. It's just kind of a hodgepodge of film clips, but I've tried to put them together in some semblance of order to show you this today. After the hearse left, a motorcade of 18 limousines followed the hearse to Pennsylvania Station with the Hoover family and other friends and dignitaries to take the train ride to Washington, D.C. And there was honor guard and flag salutes at Pennsylvania Station for the Hoover family. Once at the station, the body bearers removed the casket from the hearse and moved it down to the train. The Hoover family and friends, including Richard and Patricia Nixon, the former vice president, and Admiral Lewis Strauss, among others, with military escort, took their positions near the funeral car. The body bearers proceeded with the national color detail and the clergy, followed by the personal flag bearer, which would be the presidential flag, went through the honor cordon and placed the casket on the funeral car. A group of 150 people boarded the train and departed for Washington, D.C. at 9:35 a.m. The funeral train reached Union Station at 1:25. President and Mrs. Johnson greeted the Hoover family. Just outside Union Station, the Johnsons and the Hoovers lined up to watch the casket loaded onto the caisson. General Whaley, as escort commander, led the procession in windy Washington, D.C., down Delaware Avenue, 3 blocks to the east front of the Capitol. The procession included the Army Band, the National Color Detail, the caisson and the body bearers, the personal flag bearer, and the groom with the caparisoned horse, Blackjack. Next was the Hoover family in limousines. President Johnson followed with Secret Service escort and cars with other dignitaries. As the column moved down Delaware Avenue to the south, escort troops were in units lined up along the east side of the avenue, facing the center of the street. In order to the south were a company from each of the service academies, a company from the Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard, and a composite company of servicewomen, the Army National Guard, Air Force Reserve, and Coast Guard Reserve. Completing the line at the southern end were representatives from 8 different veterans organizations. As the procession moved along Delaware Avenue, hundreds, including the press, gathered at the east front of the Capitol, awaiting the movement of Mr. Hoover's casket into the Capitol by way of the Senate staircase, as the main stairs at the Capitol were closed for the construction of the inaugural platform, which would take place of 1964 being an election year. The inaugural would be early in 65. So here you see more of the funeral procession moving down Delaware Avenue past the blocks of the escort troops. And a word briefly about Blackjack, who followed the caisson bearing President Hoover's casket. A caparisoned horse is a longstanding practice of having a horse of a deceased military officer or leader in a funeral procession. Blackjack carried an empty saddle, saber, and boots reversed in the stirrups. Blackjack famously appeared in President John Kennedy's funeral 11 months earlier. Blackjack was a very spirited 15-hand black gelding named for Blackjack, General Blackjack Pershing. When the horse leading the caisson entered Delaware Avenue from Union Station, the 3rd Infantry fired a 21-gun salute. And as the caisson crossed Delaware Avenue, a 48 Air Force fighter jet plane in clusters of 3 passed overhead. When the cortege entered the East Plaza, the troops and his staff and the Army Band continued on until they were out of the ceremonial area. The cortege halted in front of the Senate wing steps and took their respective positions at the foot of the Senate at 2:30. I mentioned it was a windy day. The Marine Band sounded ruffles and flourishes and hail to the chief and began America the Beautiful. At first note, the body bearers removed the casket from the caisson. General Whaley led the procession up the steps into the Capitol Rotunda, into the Capitol. Hundreds watched from a distance. And there's the casket with the body bearers. And there's the Hoover family. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson are in the center, with the Hoover family close behind. And people from across the grounds there around the east front of the Capitol watching. Little girl with flowers. Inside the Senate wing entrance, the procession continued to the rotunda. The Hoover family and military and civilian leaders watched while the National Color Detail, clergy, and personal flag bearer accompanied the casket as it was carried to the center of the rotunda and placed on the Lincoln catafalque. The national colors and personal flag were posted, and that's a casket going onto the catafalque. The catafalque was a platform of beer built originally for President Lincoln's casket when he was assassinated back in 1865. And it's maintained at the Capitol and used for very special occasions of state funerals. Once the flags were posted, the First Relief Guard of Honor took position at the Lincoln catafalque, and the body bearers were dismissed after a salute. Body bearers for the same group that we'll see again a bit later. Once they departed, the Reverend Frederick Brown Harris, chaplain of the Senate, delivered a short eulogy addressing Mr. Hoover's humanitarian work and his strong, unbending, unblemished character. Then President Johnson placed a wreath at the base of the Lincoln catafalque and bowed his head. And there's a press photo. And another press photo. Chaplain Lieutenant Kenneth Ames of the Military District of Washington pronounced the benediction, concluding the rotunda ceremony a few minutes after 3. While the rotunda cleared, the Hoover family inspected arrangements for the lying in state period. After the departure of the family, the rotunda was open to the public from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. On October 24th, the rotunda opened again and was open to the public between the hours of 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Over the 2 days, approximately 30,000 people filed past the Lincoln catafalque and the Hoover casket. Throughout the lying in state period, the Joint Service Guard of Honor maintained a constant vigil, changing relief units every 30 minutes. The next day, Sunday, October 25th, at 9:30, the last ceremonies began when the casket was moved from the Capitol to Washington National Airport. The U.S. Navy Band was on the Capitol Plaza to the left of the steps. As the national colored detail appeared in the doorway, the honor cordon presented arms. The body bearers took the casket to the steps, and while the Navy Band played Abide With Me, the body bearers moved down the steps through the honor cordon and down to the hearse. After the casket was placed in the hearse, the music ceased, the honor cordon ordered arms, and the Hoover family and others entered their automobiles and followed the hearse. The motorcade reached the Military Air Transport Service Terminal at Washington National Airport at 9:55 a.m. As the motorcade traveled across the access road to the terminal, the 3rd Infantry Battery gave a 21-gun salute. At the airport, the honor cordon presented arms, and the Air Force Band sounded honors. The band played Now the Day Is Over, and the body bearers removed the casket from the hearse to through the national detail, through the honor cordon, and placed the body aboard the C-130 airplane. 3 other military aircraft were brought in to take the Hoover family and others, in all 64 people, to Iowa. The 4 planes were airborne by 10:30 a.m. The 4 aircraft from Washington, D.C. landed in Cedar Rapids shortly before 2 p.m. And now I give you WMT's radio coverage of the events starting in Cedar Rapids at the airport.
Good afternoon. This is Grant Price reporting from the burial site in Herbert Hoover Memorial Park in West Branch, Iowa, where in a little more than 1 hour, the body of the 31st President of the United States will be laid to rest. We switch now to the Cedar Rapids Municipal Airport and WMT newsman Martin Jensen.
Approaching from the east now on its final approach is the plane which carries the remains of Iowa's only president. The plane is now nearing the runway. Just touched the ground. And is taxiing on down the strip. Hundreds of people arrayed along the fences from the front of the apron all the way around behind the terminal on one side and out for several hundred yards to the west of the terminal. The inside of the terminal filled with people here to view the arrival of Mr. Hoover's body. The Hoover family and very closest friends are walking down the steps of the ramp to be greeted there by Governor Harold Hughes. Very slowly, the big cargo plane very slowly moves up to its destination, a point on the runway about 3 feet ahead of it, where it now stands. The family and close friends now walking directly toward us, escorted by an Army officer and Governor Hughes. The entire group of close friends and relatives now moving into position directly in front of us, between us and the big airplane that carries the former president's body. The color guard has now alighted from the aircraft that was carrying Mr. Hoover's body. The furled American flag on one side of the flag, a sailor carrying an M1 rifle. On the other side, a Marine. The flag appears to be carried by an Army enlisted man. Ruffles and flourishes, and hail to the chief. Iowa National Guard Band, 34th Division Band. And now fight the good fight. A hymn which was one of the favorites of Mr. Hoover's. And as they play it, the coffin bearing his body will be removed from the airport, the Air Force transport. The pallbearers appearing now, slowly marching down the ramp. The flag-covered coffin now in total view. Onto the apron it comes, slowly being carried by 8 members of the United States Armed Forces, sailors, Coast Guardsmen, soldiers, Marines. And now lined all in a line, the color guard with the American flag, leading the pallbearers toward the black hearse. Slowly marching. The door of the hearse swings open. The coffin being placed now inside the vehicle that will take it to West Branch. Members of the military standing at attention, saluting throughout the entire ceremony. Funeral party solemnly aligned, viewing the movement of the coffin to the hearse. door swings shut on the hearse. Pallbearers stand back at attention. The rifles come down from present arms. The officers and the men drop their salute.
As the funeral party now approaches the West Branch location, the mourners, the members of the official funeral party, are drawn up on one side of the top of the knoll on which the burial site is located, and then ringing all the way around the Hoover Birthplace Park, around the fence, particularly on the side next to the town, are the people, the friends of Herbert Hoover, great and small, who have come out to pay their final respects to this man who will be buried here within the hour. The beauty of this scene is one which is difficult to describe. The grass is past the peak of its summer green, but established upon the burial site here now in a complete ring are the floral tributes which were brought here to the West Branch site. And of course, as chief among them is the wreath from the President of the United States, a wreath with red, white, and blue carnations. It's very difficult to establish the size of the crowd which is gathered here, but it is very, very large. As I look across now to directly to the west, I see that there also are lined up people behind the fence, behind the military cordon, which has been established by some 240 members of the Iowa National Guard. Looking directly across the valley from this hilltop to the hill upon which the town of West Branch itself sits, there is an area of the greatest depth of humanity, probably people standing there in some 20 to 25 deep, or perhaps 40 deep, and then all the way back along the curving route to the library itself. And then in the back, in the cornfield, which has been turned into a parking lot for this day, people are lined up all along that fence also, and it must stretch for a distance of at least half a mile. The traffic situation became acute. Traffic was backed up, we're told, for a mile or more.
This is Dennis Swanson reporting from along the route of the funeral cortege, which has just passed by our vantage point some 1 mile north of Interstate 80 on Highway 218. The cortege is moving at a pace of 30 miles an hour, led by the commanding general of the 5th U.S. Army, Lieutenant General C.G. Dodge. In all, some 17 official cars plus escort vehicles in the cortege, which within minutes should be coming into view of Bob Nelson as it turns onto Interstate 80, heading on the last leg of the trip. A large number of cars parked along the way to catch a fleeting glimpse of the cortege as it made its way down the highway. This is Dennis Swanson, WMT News, returning you to our central studio.
West Branch from the west on Interstate 80. In a few moments, the hearse bearing the body of President Hoover, the only Iowan ever to become president and the first United States chief executive from a state west of the Mississippi, will leave the interstate and begin the final half mile of the trip to the gravesite. Now from the north side of the funeral knoll, where we just have in view the hearse, the honor guard drawn up beside it, representing all members of the armed services, the color guard standing on the opposite side of the roadway. The door of the hearse has now been opened. The body bearers will be moving the casket, the coffin, a short distance, a few inches out of the car for the phase of this ceremony, which will include the final honors to Mr. Hoover, the playing 4 times of ruffles and flourishes, and the national anthem. The members of the family now standing on the gravel road, which and there is the Army band has concluded playing the national anthem and immediately begins the notes of the battle hymn of the Republic, Mr. Hoover's favorite hymn. This is the signal for the funeral party to move from the cortege to the gravesite. The colors unfurled on the first note of the ruffles and flourishes. Move it back slowly into a position to begin coming up the incline, which at one point is very steep. Now the procession begins. Now, just coming into my view, General Dodge, commander of the United States Fifth Army, the escort commander for this funeral service. Immediately behind him, the National Color Detail, a Navy man, an Army man, and a Marine. And then Dr. Elton Trueblood, Quaker clergyman who will preside at the religious service at the grave. And now passing before my view, a casket borne by servicemen containing the body of the 31st President of the United States, coming home to rest in the Isle soil, which he trod as a boy. His sons, Herbert Jr. and Alan and their wives, and 7 grandchildren of Herbert Hoover immediately behind the family. And now passing in front of our vantage point, the governor of Iowa, Harold Hughes, immediately behind him, Senator Barry Goldwater, the Republican candidate for President of the United States. And then the very close friends of the family and military escort proceeding slowly to the green with its canopy of trees at the rear, looking out over the valley on which rests the Hoover Library and the cottage where this man was born. The funeral procession slowly filing into place.
In accordance with the heritage which President Hoover knew and cherished, we shall begin this service with a period of reverent silence, into which we ask you all to join. Let us pray. O Lord, who dost work through the lives of men, we thank thee this day for the life of Herbert Hoover. We thank thee for his compassion, for his deep humility, for his unchallenged integrity, for his family life, for his abiding faith in Jesus Christ. Make this, O Father, a time of rejoicing in the long and uncorrupted life and in the hope of glory into which this our friend has now entered. Make us to rejoice, because nothing can separate us or him from the love of Christ. Amen. It would be suitable at this time to read the noblest passages of the New Testament, which are concerned with the resurrection in Christ. There is one glory of the sun, and another glory of the moon, and another glory of the stars. For stars differ from stars in glory. So it is with the resurrection of the dead. What is sown is perishable. What is raised is imperishable. It is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness. It is raised in power. It is sown a physical body. It is raised a spiritual body. Oh, I tell you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall be changed. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet, for the trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised imperishable, and we shall be changed. For this perishable must put on imperishable, and this mortal must put on immortality. When the perishable puts on the imperishable, and the mortal puts on immortality, then shall come to pass the saying that is written, death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is thy victory? O death, where is thy sting? Thanks be to God, who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ, who then shall separate us from the love of Christ. Shall tribulation, or distress, or persecution, or famine, or nakedness, or peril, or sword? No, in all
all these things, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am persuaded that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation can separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. We have gathered here, dear friends, to honor one of the great men of the 20th century. His is the story of what is best in the American heritage. He bears witness to a way of life which we seldom demonstrate, but which is infinitely precious in that it provides a standard by which we may judge our relative failures as well as our relative successes. Insofar as his is the kind of life we truly prize, the basic orientation of the Republic is likely to be sound. Therefore, we perform a service when we try to make clear the nature of the heritage which Herbert Hoover, the 31st President of the United States of America, has represented with unusual fidelity. First, there is the beginning, which combines reverence, frugality, and toil. Herbert Hoover belongs to the procession of hard-working and God-loving Quaker pioneers who crossed the nation in great steps, establishing strong communities at each point. West Milton, Ohio, and West Branch, Iowa were important stopping places as the Hoovers moved from the Atlantic to the Pacific. The Quaker Cemetery near the West Branch of the Miami River and the simple frame birthplace here at West Branch, Iowa are potent symbols of something precious in American history. They are symbols of men close to the soil and close to Almighty God who made it. It is important to remember that the life of toil and reverence led naturally to the life of learning. So the schools were set up at each stopping place along the way. That Herbert Hoover as a boy should be attracted to Stanford University in its opening was therefore in no way surprising. The expectation of hard work carried over into the life of learning in those glorious years when Stanford was new. By amazing good fortune, the Quaker boy was guided not only into the study of geology, but into the study of Latin under a man as remarkable as Professor Augustus T. Murray. The result was an unending spiritual influence, which reached its climax in the days in the White House. Herbert Hoover's work as a geologist and mining engineer was brilliantly successful. But the public judgment is right in thinking of this vocational chapter as only a preparation for larger work. The great days at the end of the First World War and immediately afterward, when Herbert Hoover, in his mission of compassion, was the most influential man in Europe, constituted not an interlude in Herbert Hoover's career, but a logical fulfillment. All along, the heritage to which he was being faithful was one in which public service is intrinsic. The consciously nourished ideal required every Christian to find on his pilgrim way the life to which God had called him, whether humble or exalted. It included a conception in which duty could be mentioned without self-consciousness and without apology. It required of each person that he should show diligence in his calling, that he should practice frugality and simplicity, and that he should accept responsibility for some unique contribution to the total community. The most important thing to say about Herbert Hoover is that he has demonstrated an ethic which is identical with that which made America great. There are some who suppose that we have outgrown it, or that we ought to outgrow it. But a life like that which we honor today is the best refutation of their position. It is not unreasonable to see Herbert Hoover's life in 6 major chapters. These 6 are as follows. First, boy in Iowa and Oregon. Second, student at Stanford. Third, engineer in various countries. Fourth, director of relief. Fifth, statesman. Sixth, elder. It might be supposed that the last of these chapters would be an anticlimax, but it has not been so. Instead, his influence has gone on from strength to strength. He became the very ideal of the elder statesman, writing much, speaking seldom, counseling untold numbers of men and women, and standing as a symbol of moral strength. All knew that there was at least one great man in America who stood above the possibility of corruption and self-seeking. All recognized that he was one who had never sought personal gain or even payment for his public service. As the years went on, after the end of the White House days, through the Great Depression, through the Second World War, and through the years which succeeded that war, there was probably no thoughtful person in the United States who did not come to see the unfairness of the judgment of those who had blamed Mr. Hoover for what was in reality a worldwide economic storm. In his magnificent patience, Mr. Hoover did not even worry about the outcome. He knew that he had been right. He knew that he had been unjustly blamed. And by a wonderful grace, he lived long enough to see the time when what had been a problem was a problem no longer. Indeed, as we see the events of 35 years ago in perspective, it is obvious that the critics have been more hurt than the criticized. This is particularly true of those who tried to raise their own public stature by seeking to harm that of Mr. Hoover. These critics now stand out clearly for all to see, and the public has made its judgment. The 6 chapters are now over. In one sense, the volume is complete. But there is another sense in which it is still going on. Herbert Hoover will be remembered as long as the American dream is cherished, because he is to such a great extent the last of the famous pioneers. He represents the westward trek. He represents dignified simplicity. He represents to a remarkable degree the unity of a faith which expresses itself in compassionate service to mankind. He has worked hard. He has been very brave. He has endured. How appropriate that what is mortal of him should finally rest after all his struggles and his victories in his native soil, midway in the western trek and near the middle of North America. He never wavered from the living faith in Jesus Christ, which was indigenous to his heritage, and in which he lived and served died. The story is a great one, and it is a good one. It is essentially a story that is triumphant. Therefore, it is reasonable that today our mood should be one of rejoicing. This is not a time for tears. This corruption has put on incorruption. This mortal has put on immortality. Death is swallowed up in victory. Thanks be to God, which giveth us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. And now let me ask this great company to bow their heads in prayer for the final prayer for this our friend. And now, O most gracious Father, bless this great gathering of thy children in this place of memory, of beauty, and of peace. Send each one of us forth with a new dedication and a new compassion. Teach us to be a company of memory and of hope as we pay our final respect to thy servant, Herbert Hoover. Therefore, we commit his body to the ground and his soul to thy eternal keeping. Amen.
Dr. Trueblood has just conducted the burial service for Hoover. The microphone used by Dr. Trueblood is now being moved to one side. Preparations are being made to present the wreath of President Lyndon Johnson. Bring forward. Wreath, presidential wreath, is now being placed at the front of the casket by General Dodge, a Fifth Army commander. General Dodge steps back, and the ceremony is about to conclude. The rendering taps, the colors are now being folded over the simple coffin by the body bearers made up of enlisted men of all the services. An Air Force man standing at attention with the presidential flag, the National Color Guard made up of Navy, Army, and Marine personnel bearing the national colors. The national emblem now being folded over the coffin of Herbert Hoover. The emblem now being passed down the line list of men reaches forward, and General Dodge takes it, places it under his left arm, after giving the colors his salute. The body bearers now step back. The color guard begins to move out. A very slow cadence. The body bearers behind them, moving out over the green. The military detail moves forward. General Dodge steps up to Herbert Hoover Jr. and presents to him the national flag, which was used in this funeral service for the nation's 31st president. The casket stands now over the grave with a wreath of white flowers resting upon it. At the front of the casket is the presidential wreath made up of red, white, and blue carnations. And all around the green are flowers of every description, including one made up in the form of a cross of white flowers, another a shield of the United States colors, and the tribute which the nation has paid to the 31st President of the United States is at an end. This is Grant Price, speaking from the Herbert Hoover burial site, returning you to our studios.
That's that.
Well, thank you, Lynn. We do have just a couple of minutes and a lot of questions here to run through. Deb and several others are wondering, why do they refer to them as body carriers instead of pallbearers? Was that a cultural thing at the time, or is there any story behind that terminology?
Probably a cultural. I think it could be old school, because throughout almost all the radio men referred to the box in which the body was in as a coffin. That is incorrect. It was a casket. A coffin is a diamond shaped, like, picture a kite with the top and the bottom cut off. You know, you see them in the 1920s horror movies and all of that. That's a coffin. Caskets are rectangular. Mr. Hoover was buried in a rectangle. So I suspect they're just out of date.
Mm-hmm. When was the last time that Mr. Hoover visited the birthplace in West Branch?
He was last in West Branch in 1962 for the dedication of the library. And prior to that, it was his 80th birthday in 1954.
Mm-hmm. And then I know Lou Henry had died, I think, 20 years before him, and was buried in California. But
right.
When was she then moved to West Branch?
She was buried, interned with Mr. Hoover within a week. So somewhere October 30, 31, or November 1st, because that last picture where he's describing the flowers and you see no casket, but two military men standing guard, that was in that 1 week period before they had moved Mrs. Hoover's body from being interred in Palo Alto, California, to West Branch.
Oh, was that
there was a small,
is that a 24-hour guard that they had
it was
posted?
a small kind of a private ceremony when that happened.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And a few people are also wondering, did former Presidents Truman and Eisenhower attend the funeral? I believe they were probably there in Washington, but did they come to West Branch as well?
They were not in Washington either. Their health problems came up, and neither Mr. Eisenhower nor Mr. Truman were on hand in DC or West Branch. They had sent posted messages of, eulogizing Mr. Hoover and sent their condolences to the family, but medical problems left them unable to actually attend in either place.
Mhm. And there's some question on, did he die in, it was obviously in New York, but was it at the Waldorf? And then what was the cause of death?
He was at the Waldorf. It was technically they say it was cancer, but actually it was internal bleeding and internal hemorrhaging that they had been dealing with for 3 or 4 days, around October 16th, October 17th. They had given him lots of blood transfusions, all kinds of paramedic type assistance in the Waldorf, but his body just kind of wore out and gave up the ghost, as it were, in around about 11:35 in the morning on the 20th.
Mhm. Bruce
With
is
the
asking,
family nearby, with them all. Yeah.
Bruce is asking, where are Hoover's parents buried? Are they here in West Branch at the cemetery up there?
Right. They're buried in the West Branch Cemetery here in town, as is Alan Hoover, their son.
And where is that cemetery? I've never been up that way.
It's kind of by West Branch High School, off to the northwest of town.
We saw the video of the cargo plane coming into Cedar Rapids, and Stephen's asking, why wasn't it Air Force One? Was there an Air Force One at that time, and was that exclusive
At
for
that time? Yes. It's that would not have been done. I don't think it's standard procedure. It's a military operation for the presidential funeral, so that would have been strictly U.S. Army. It was a MATS, military air transport service that flew that plane. So it would not have been Air Force One unless they had made some kind of dispensation to allow that. But I don't think in other more recent presidential funerals, I don't think Air Force One is used. I don't recall it being used, but maybe so. Usually they happen during the day when I'm at work.
Now, we saw also in the video that out east they did a 21 gun salute. Was there an issue with doing that in West Branch?
That was a concern, and the family asked not to have the 21 gun salute.
Is that due to like the Quaker upbringing and that kind of thing?
Between that and it was a Sunday. This funeral was here on a Sunday. So middle of Sunday afternoon, you have 21 rifles. In Washington, the 21 gun salute at near the train station where he came in, and at the airport, it wasn't just rifle M16 bang bang, but it was howitzers.
Yeah,
they weren't going to bring howitzers to West Branch, and the riflemen, that just be too big of a distraction in the middle of the afternoon to have the 21 gun salute. It was, as it were, shot down by the family.
General Dodge played an important role in this. Was he an Iowan by heritage? Mary's asking that.
I believe he was an Iowa native. That might be in the after action report. Most of the information I had that I told you from Washington, from the events in New York and Washington, D.C. came from the Army after action report that we have on file. that if there's any other specific questions that if we run out of time, you can zip off an email to hoover.library@archives.gov, and our staff will be able to answer that. It might not be instantaneously because we have very limited access still with COVID cases high, very limited access to the library, but at least one of our archival staff is in every day.
And there's
And I'll be in.
yeah, you and your
I'll be in tomorrow, in fact. So if you have a
Sure.
question about pictures.
Yeah, and you and the other archivists there, they're just a tremendous resource for all things Hoover and even presidential and other historical moments, because they scoured all those documents and the photos and videos. Really a great wealth of information there. And when that research area is open, it's open to the public. They can go in and do research. It's just not right at this time, but once the COVID stuff wanes a little bit more, that'll open up again. And that is open for anybody to use. So great information there, Lynn. Thank you for that. I saw the time we have for questions for now, but I would like to thank our archivist, Lynn Smith, for joining us tonight for an excellent presentation. I'd also like to thank the Herbert Hoover Library Museum and the National Historic Site, and all the public libraries who helped make tonight's program a success. We're welcoming a new public library into the fold. The Norwalk Easter Public Library has recently joined to partner with sharing these programs with their patrons, and we welcome you to tonight's event, and I encourage you to come to all the future events too. I'd like to share my screen here, and thank you all again for coming. I encourage you all to come visit the Hoover campus and enjoy a walk around the park and explore the historic buildings as the temperatures begin to cool and the leaves begin to change colors in the coming weeks. It's really quite a nice walk in the brisk air, and to see all the leaves changing in the historical sites. And the Presidential Library Museum is now open again Tuesdays through Saturdays from 9 till 5 with limited ticketing. You get those in advance online. Don't miss the Da Vinci Machines in Motion exhibit, which will be here through January 2nd. The National Historic Site and the historic buildings and visitor center are also open for you to enjoy and explore, like the Birthplace Cottage, Friends Meeting House, the grave site up the hill. You're welcome to check out the Loop Road and go on up and visit the grave site, where you can visit the graves of Herbert and Lou Henry Hoover. And don't forget to join us on Thursday, November 18th at 6 p.m. for another interesting Third Thursday program. The Hoover Presidential Foundation staff is ready to assist you with your membership needs or charitable gifts in support of the Hoover campus and the museum renovation. You can learn a lot more about that and even show your support at the timelessvaluescampaign.org website. So on behalf of all of us here at the Hoover campus and with the participating public libraries, we thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your next visit to the Hoover campus.
And I thank you as well. Have a good day.